The first signs of the HFY's arrival came in the dead of night, a single dark silhouette against the stars that grew larger by the second. The world had no time to react before the ships descended in mass, covering entire continents with their shadow, each craft a monolithic beast of metal and fire. They didn't announce their presence with grand speeches or demands. They arrived in silence and began to strike cities with surgical precision. Their weapons tore through buildings like paper, cutting through the heart of humanity's greatest accomplishments. Panic spread through every major city, emergency alarms blaring in a rhythm of doom, and dread soldiers scrambled, but their weapons were useless. Nothing worked against the alien technology that danced above them. Humans ran for cover, but they couldn't escape, not when the skies were filled with destruction. The HFY's didn't come for resources, they didn't come for riches, they came for something far more precious, far more sacred. They came for the women of Earth, abducting them with terrifying precision, removing them from their homes, from the streets, from their families, with cold and calculated efficiency. Nothing seemed to stop them, not tanks, not bombs, not even the combined military forces of Earth could slow their advance. They moved with such purpose, such deadly force, that it was clear they had done this before. They had invaded worlds before and destroyed races before, but nothing had prepared them for the fury of humanity. They didn't know what they had provoked yet, but they would soon learn. Earth's blood ran hot with rage. The human spirit was not one to bow down or break. When faced with terror, humanity had suffered too many times and had always risen above, and that HFY's did not know that they had awakened a beast from the depths of the human heart, a force that could not be reasoned with, could not be bargained with. Their ships were fast and powerful, but the humans were relentless. No one could tell how long the invaders would stay. No one could guess how many women they had taken or how many were left. But one thing was certain: this was only the beginning of the war. The moment the first abduction happened, the moment the first screams were heard from the mouths of the HFY's, the fuse had been lit, and it was only a matter of time before the fire would spread and explode across the world. The aliens had no idea what they had done. They thought Earth was just another planet in the galaxy, another race to conquer and exploit. They didn't understand what humanity could do when it was cornered. They didn't understand the strength of a people who had fought and survived wars and plagues and poverty. They didn't understand that the women they had stolen were not just victims. They were the heart of the planet, the mothers, the daughters, the wives, the sisters who held the world together. They had made a grave mistake, and it would be their last one. The first battle had been lost, but the war had only just begun. The world shifted after the first wave of devastation. The terror was real, and the grief was palpable, but something else began to stir inside humanity, a quiet but growing fire, the kind that cannot be extinguished by fear or loss or death. It was the kind of fire that only humans could know when backed into a corner, when pushed too far, when their hearts were filled with rage and sorrow. The nations of Earth began to unite, not out of desperation, but out of defiance. Humanity stood together for the first time in centuries, as if the very will to survive had forged a new identity, a new collective spirit. The governments of Earth no longer squabbled over petty borders or resources. They recognized the threat they were facing and turned all their efforts to one single cause: vengeance. Earth's brightest minds began to work in secret, developing new weapons, new technology that might give them a fighting chance. At first, they focused on defense, building up their cities, fortifying their lines. But soon they realized it wasn't enough. They needed to take the fight to the enemy. They needed to go on the offensive. So they did. Human soldiers trained with newfound ferocity. Their tactics became ruthless and strategic, and every battle was a test of not just military might, but human will. The human spirit was a weapon unlike any other. They learned to strike quickly and hard, taking advantage of the smallest weakness in the HFY's defenses. And with each victory, each small step forward, humanity felt its strength growing. They learned the names of their lost women. The stories of their courage and determination began to fuel the war effort as every man, woman, and child in Earth's vast cities heard of the abductions and the unimaginable horrors. that Xyrix had inflicted the war was no longer just about survival. It became personal. It was no longer about just pushing back invaders. It became about saving every soul, taken every person, lost every family, shattered. The Xyrix couldn't understand what they were facing. They thought the human response would be weak, would crumble under the weight of their technology. They thought that humans would submit, but they did not understand the power of grief, the power of love, the power of a people who had already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. They underestimated humanity's ability to fight back with the strength of thousands of generations of warriors and survivors. But the fire was just beginning to burn brighter. With every strike, humanity gave the Xyrix one simple message: we will never stop, we will never bow, we will never surrender. Earth would bleed, but it would never break. Humanity's rage was no longer a whisper, it was a roar, and with every battle the Xyrix began to feel it. The humans had stopped being just victims. They had become hunters. Every day Earth's forces pushed further into enemy territory. Every skirmish, another step closer to their goal. The first few months of war had been chaotic, desperate, but humanity had learned quickly. The aliens underestimated the human capacity to adapt, to survive, and to fight back. The resistance formed into a united front, and from the ashes of their cities came warriors unafraid of the Xyrix invaders. They had seen what had been done to their women, and they would never forgive it. The first successful raid took place on a Xyrix supply convoy, hidden deep in an asteroid field. Human fighters descended from the shadows like predators, tearing through the alien defenses with a fury that stunned their enemies. The Xyrix didn't know how to react. They had believed the humans would crumble beneath the weight of their invasion, but instead they found themselves engaged in a war they had never anticipated, one where every human was a soldier and every soldier was ready to die for a cause that was far bigger than themselves. The attack on the convoy was just the beginning. Humanity began striking the Xyrix where it hurt most: their supply lines, their research facilities, their factories. Every blow was calculated, every strike carefully planned. They weren't just fighting for the women anymore. They were fighting to tear apart the very infrastructure of the Xyrix empire, to cripple their ability to continue the war. It was during one of these raids that a human task force discovered something horrifying buried deep within the bowels of a Xyrix research station. The women they had taken weren't just captives. They had been subjected to terrible experiments, twisted biological tests, meant to turn them into weapons to be used against their own kind. The images were enough to make even the hardiest soldiers sick to their stomachs, but it also ignited something darker within them. Vengeance had always burned inside humanity, but now it had become a wildfire. With every discovery, with every piece of evidence that the Xyrix had gone beyond cruelty to madness, the human warriors grew more and more determined. They no longer just wanted to kill the invaders, they wanted to make them suffer. They wanted the Xyrix to feel the weight of every injustice they had inflicted on Earth and its people. The very thought of the experiments made every fight personal. Every alien that fell was another blow for the lost women, another step closer to the revenge they sought. Humanity became a living nightmare for the Xyrix, no longer the hunted, but the hunters. Now the aliens were the ones in fear. Every day brought new reports of alien ships falling out of the sky, of bases overrun and destroyed by human forces. The war had shifted. The Xyrix were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. They were simply prey. They hadn't counted on humanity's refusal to break. They hadn't counted on the unyielding spirit that drove the human race forward. They hadn't counted on humans fighting not just for survival, but for the souls of their people, and the rage of the entire species could not be stopped. The time for stealth was over. Humanity knew that to truly end the Xyrix, they would have to bring the war to their doorstep, to show them the full might of the Earth that had risen from the ashes of despair. Earth's leaders made the decision to launch a full-scale invasion. The Xyrix homeworld would be the target, the heart of their empire. The moment the fleets were ready, the order was given, and human ships charged toward Xyrix Prime with a fury that could not be matched. The Xyrix never expected it. They had believed the humans would tire. They had thought Earth would falter under the weight of the war. But the humans were not like the species they had conquered before. Earth's resolve had hardened. Their warriors were relentless, their ships were swift, and armed with the latest technology that had been forged in the fires of battle. As the human fleets approached the alien planet, the Exarchs retaliated with everything they had. Their forces gathered to protect their world. The battle began in the cold depths of space, with ship after ship colliding in a fiery blaze. Humanity pushed forward. The opening salvo was deafening, but it didn't stop them. The battle raged for days. The human forces were undeterred despite the overwhelming odds. They moved as one, a single entity of fire and fury, their ships cutting through the alien defenses with precision and deadly force. The Exarchs were unprepared for the brutality of humanity's assault. They had thought they could defend their homeworld, but they didn't understand the sheer power of a species fighting with everything they had. When the human fleet broke through the final defense lines, they descended upon Exarchs Prime. Like a storm, they landed on the surface and turned the planet into a battlefield. Alien structures were leveled and human forces surged through the streets, taking down every Exarch stronghold in their way. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and destruction as the humans fought to tear down the heart of that Exarch empire. Block by block, city by city, the Exarchs began to realize the true cost of their invasion. They had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. But the humans didn't stop there. They moved deeper into the planet's core, into the heart of Exarch's most guarded facilities. There they found what they were searching for, the final piece of the puzzle, the technology the Exarchs had used to capture and experiment on the women of Earth. This was the heart of the Exarch's plans, the very thing that had sparked humanity's fury, and it would be destroyed at any cost. Human soldiers fought their way through the last defenses to reach the heart of the Exarch's operation. Their mission was clear: to tear apart the very thing that had caused so much pain and suffering for their people. They planted explosives and set fire to the research labs. They didn't just want to defeat the Exarchs. They wanted to erase every trace of their twisted experiments to ensure nothing like this would ever happen again. As the explosions tore through the facility, the Exarchs felt their doom approaching. Humanity had come to their doorstep, and they were going to pay for every life they had taken, for every woman they had stolen from Earth. The world that had once been a symbol of their superiority was now a funeral pyre. Humanity would burn their world to the ground, and the Exarchs would know that no one, no empire, no invader was beyond the reach of humanity's wrath. The firestorm that consumed Exarchs Prime was only the beginning. Humanity did not stop at the destruction of the homeworld. Their fury was a force that would not be quelled. They had won a battle, but the war had a much larger scope. The Exarchs had spread across the galaxy. Their empire had woven itself into the fabric of the stars, and humanity would not let their legacy of suffering remain untouched. Earth did not hesitate. They immediately turned their sights to the other Exarchs colonies scattered across the galaxy, each one a reminder of the pain and loss they had caused. Humanity's vengeance was relentless. Fleets of human ships charged from system to system, each planet and colony falling under their wrath like dominoes. The Exarchs never stood a chance. They tried to fight back, but their forces were stretched too thin. Their empire was in ruins, and their will to resist had broken. As one by one their colonies burned, humanity left no trace of them behind. Entire worlds were reduced to ash as they ravaged the remnants of Exarch civilization. With a fury that seemed to have no end, they targeted every last outpost, every last facility and base, and wiped them from existence. They didn't need to negotiate. They didn't need to take prisoners. They simply destroyed everything in their path. As their ships rained hell upon the Exarchs planets, the message became clear to the galaxy: humanity would not stop until the Exarchs were erased completely. Humanity's war machine was unstoppable, and its thirst for retribution could not be quenched, no matter the cost. Entire fleets of alien ships were swallowed by the void as human weapons found their mark and sent them crashing into oblivion. Every space station that had once been a symbol of the Exarch's might was now a heap of twisted metal, drifting in the silence of space. Humanity did not care for diplomacy. They did not care for the politics of the stars. They had been wronged, and they would make sure the universe knew what it meant to face their wrath. And then there came the final strike. Humanity found the very heart of the Xyrix war efforts, the place where the last remnants of their once proud empire gathered to rebuild and rally their forces. It was a station hidden on the edge of the galaxy, tucked away in the shadows of deep space. And it was here that humanity launched their final assault. It wasn't just a military operation. It was a statement, a message to the stars, that Earth would never be a victim again. Their ships descended on the station like a swarm of locusts, unleashing their weapons with deadly precision, obliterating everything in sight. Every Xyrix soldier that stood in their way was cut down with ruthless efficiency. The humans made sure that nothing was left behind, no survivors, no hope for a revival of the Xyrix Empire. The final blow came as Earth's most powerful weapon was deployed, a planet-destroying device that sent shockwaves through the galaxy with a single pulse. It tore the station apart, turning it into a supernova of destruction. The shockwave rippled across the stars, and as the light of the explosion faded, the Xyrix were no more. Their empire had been erased from existence, and the galaxy knew that humanity had delivered a message, one that would echo across time and space. If you harm them, if you take from them, there will be no forgiveness. There will be no mercy. Humanity would be a force to be reckoned with, and anyone who dared challenge them would learn the cost of underestimating the unyielding will of Earth. The galaxy trembled as the news of the Xyrix's complete destruction spread from one corner of the stars to the next. The once mighty empire was no more, and humanity stood victorious in the ashes. The message was clear, and it reverberated across every alien species in the universe. Earth had risen from the brink of annihilation and had torn apart an empire that had believed it could crush them. Now, no one looked at humanity the same way again. They had been underestimated, but not anymore. The very name of Earth was a symbol of fear and awe. No longer were they seen as a vulnerable species. No longer did anyone think they were weak and easy prey. The galaxy now knew that any attack on humanity would be met with unimaginable force. The stars that had once seemed so vast and infinite now seemed smaller and less distant to the humans. They knew the galaxy would never be the same, and that the balance of power had shifted forever. Those who had once ruled with an iron fist now cowered in the face of the humans' wrath. Alien races that had never thought twice about humanity's place in the cosmos were now rethinking their strategies. There was no longer room for arrogance in the face of Earth's power, and humanity wasn't content with just defending itself. No, Earth's influence began to spread like wildfire through the galaxy. Their fleets now patrolled the stars not as wanderers, but as enforcers of justice. They were everywhere. The galaxy began to change its politics, began to shift. The old empires looked over their shoulders. With every decision they made, they no longer felt secure that Xyrix had fallen because they underestimated Earth. And now everyone else had to worry about the same fate. Earth was no longer a backwater planet forgotten by the greater universe. It was a force that could not be ignored, no matter how powerful an alien race was, no matter how far they had stretched their empire. They now knew that the humans could strike at any time from any corner of the galaxy, and with their past and their rage driving them forward, no one was safe. As Earth's influence continued to grow, old enemies began to fall one by one, and new alliances were forged. The galaxy had become a chessboard, and Earth had just claimed the queen. Humanity was no longer a race that could be pushed around. They were a race that would dominate every corner of the galaxy, and no one dared to challenge them. Those who had crossed the humans before began to wonder if their time had come to an end, if the price of their arrogance had been too high. And as the years passed, Earth's fleets grew stronger and bolder. Their ships were unstoppable, their weapons unmatched, and their resolve unbreakable. The galaxy understood that Earth's dominance was not a fleeting moment. It was the beginning of an era, and any race that threatened them would learn the same lesson as the Xyrix. If you take from humanity, if you harm them, there would be no place for you in the stars, and you would be erased. The legacy of Earth was one of victory and strength, and it had been carved into the very fabric of the galaxy. A new chapter had begun, and it was written in the blood and fire of the Xyrix. The galaxy had changed forever, and so had humanity. They were no longer a species that lived in the shadows or trembled before the might of others. Earth had risen from the depths of despair and claimed its place at the center of the stars. The memory of the Xyrix was a fading scar, But their destruction would echo through history as a testament to what happened when the universe underestimated the strength of the human spirit. The people of Earth never forgot what they had lost. They told their children the stories of the women who had been taken, the lives that had been torn apart, and how it had ignited a fire in the hearts of all humanity. It became a part of their culture, a part of their identity, the legacy of those who fought and died for a future where no one could take from them again. Humanity's strength was not just in their ships or their weapons. It was in the unity they had forged in the fires of war. They had stood together and survived together, and it had made them stronger than anything that had come before them. The fire that burned within them was no longer just for vengeance. It had become something greater, something that would drive them forward for generations to come. They rebuilt their world, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually. The people of Earth learned to live again, to love again. But they also remembered what it had cost them. They remembered that the universe was a place that could be both beautiful and brutal, and they would never be caught unprepared again. Humanity had become the apex of the galaxy, but they were not cruel rulers. They did not seek to dominate just to protect. They built alliances with those who sought peace and forged partnerships that would ensure their place in the future of the stars. But they did so knowing that if their peace was ever threatened, the flames of their past would be reignited, and the fire they had set upon the Exarchs would burn again. But for now, the people of Earth lived in a new world, a world where their children could play under the stars without fear, where their future was no longer uncertain, and where their place in the universe was undeniable. The legacy of the Exarchs was the fire that forged them into what they were now, but the legacy of humanity was the peace that followed the storms of war. They had risen from the ashes of their losses and created something better. And as they looked to the stars, they saw not just a battlefield, but a future where they could thrive and explore and build, where they would be respected by all and feared by none. The universe had learned the price of underestimating humanity. The galaxy had learned the price of taking from them. And now every alien species knew that if they dared to challenge Earth, they would face the same fate as the Exarchs, and the universe would remember the fire that burned and the world that had risen to claim its place among the stars. The fire was never gone. It was simply waiting for the next challenge to arise, and when it did, humanity would be ready.